I think part of my emotional attachment to the Raptors is I have a soft spot for players where I feel like there's this perception of them and it could be negative for some reason. And it could be overwhelmingly positive, turn to negative, and then never shift back. It feels like Pascal Siakam, league wide, has been at that point for a while. And he has quietly he would have made my all-star team if I had like any power over that. Going through my all NBA teams quickly, I'm pretty sure he's going to make one of my three. What has most impressed you about him this season? But also, do you have like any sort of theory or explanation for why I don't want to use the cliche word underrated, but why the perception is the way it is of him?
I have that same thing with you where those are my favorite guys. Like there's a reason why I really like Rudy Gobert, probably more than most people, because I'm just like, no one is appreciating.
You are in the minority with that.
I recognize that, but it's more so like, and it's why I became a diehard Kyle Lowry fan, as Raptor fans were telling me DeMar DeRozan was better. And I'm like, what are we watching on the court? Anyway, besides the point. Back to Pascal Siakam. I think one of the things that like really bothers me that people do really quickly is anoint guys. And I think that he was anointed fairly early on, and he was the most improved player in 2019, and he was the number 2 scoring option on a championship win team against guys like Jonathan Isaac, Rudy Gobert, Jonathan Isaac, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Draymond Green. Who else did he play? Joel Embiid. Those were the guys guarding him, which could field an All NBA first defensive team, right? Like right there. So he did deserve a lot of the praise, but I felt like a lot of that was given to him a little too quickly, a little too early. How much praise was heaped on him? I still think Kyle Lowry was the second best player on that team. I still think Kyle Lowry was the best player on the team the following year, although he didn't make an All-NBA team ahead of Pascal Siakam. So I think that's part of it. And then also the bubble came, and I'm not like, people don't watch the Toronto Raptors. Like I recognize that they're the Canadian team. They don't get nationally televised games in America because we're in Canada. Our TV ratings don't count for us, right? So I recognize people don't watch him. And then the bubble came, and that's where everyone started to watch everything, because it was just 24/7 basketball with nothing else going on in the world. And he was coming off of a groin injury. He was an All-NBA player, an All-Star starter that year. And what people saw was the worst version of Pascal Siakam that we've ever seen. And so the narrative changes just as quickly as it began for him. And so I think that's part of it. At least that's my understanding of what's happening. It changed in Toronto as well. It felt like Raptor fans were really quickly dismissing him and wanting him off the team. But this year, I think you asked like how he's improved as well. It feels like every point of his game. I mean, his handle is so much tighter than it's been. He's got an in-between game, which was a thing that he didn't really have before, where he does have that floater now. His touch around the basket is so much better because he's so much stronger and can finish with through contact now. He leads the team in free throw rate, which I mean is not very high, but still he's the only really guy that can really draw contact and finish through it consistently. His playmaking is probably the number one thing that you would say has improved this season, where even Fred VanVleet has Fred has never really been better on ball as he's been off ball. And with the emergence of Pascal Siakam as a guy who we've seen play point power forward so often for this team, he is the point guard quite often, even when Fred shares the court with him, has allowed Fred to unleash his game as you know, an off-ball shooter. So the playmaking, the handle being tighter, the ability to finish through contact, the in-between game, being able to hit that floater, that mid-range shot that he hasn't really had in the past, has taken his game to another level. This is the best Pascal Siakam that we've seen. And that's not even mentioning his defense. And I think for a good chunk of that, you know, January run where they had a 7 or 8 game win streak, it was Pascal Siakam playing some of the best defense that we've ever seen as well.
That was one of the first things that stood out to me was the passing, because to me, the mark of a good player is if you're making decisions that I can't understand in real time. And when you go back and watch him, and it seems like he's seen like 2 or 3 different passes he can throw. And then you mentioned the handle, which I think has really just also helped him become like a little bit more unpredictable with his directionality on drives, where if you go back like 2 years or something, it was a straight line almost. And now it's just like he can be all over the place and is better through traffic. So those are the things that stood out to me. And I think you're probably spot on with the anointing. Like that rush to coordinate definitely skews how we view players as well. And I don't know that he's ever recovered from it, but his play is recovered from it. And yet the perception isn't. So, and we were at the point where people just thought he was on this terrible contract. And even the people that watch him, and you could see it more religiously or closely, were criticizing him for not being number one material on a title team, that's like, if we're being honest, that might be 10 guys in the league. And so if
I
you're
think that's generous. I think 10 guys as a number one player on a championship team is generous. There's so few.
right, and if that's like the criticism, if that's the bar to which we're holding him, there's real value in being the 2 or the 3 on a title team. Like the Knicks are seeing that now that Julius Randle has imploded, where he doesn't even look like he could be the number 3 on a really good team. So that's the part I never understood is you there are people commenting who watch him, and it's just, oh, he's not a number 1, so it's just, that's a problem. Like,
sorry, he's not Kawhi Leonard, guys. Like, and also it's just like, well, you need a number 1 to win a champ. You need a number 2 to win a championship team. And what happens when you trade your number 2 for just, I don't know, scraps, and then you're looking to get that guy because you're wasting your number 1's prime because he doesn't have that Pippen and his Jordan.
And there's been no like steadiness in the hierarchy of the Raptors, because you go from like having DeRozan, then you add Kawhi, then Kawhi is gone, and now Kyle Lowry is gone. And so it's just been like this. He's been like shimmied between these different roles, and arguably was probably just like promoted or shoved into a little bit of an outsized role, more so than he was ready for. And now he's just clearly ready for it. I don't think he's perfect. Like if you were naming half court options and creators, no, you don't necessarily, he's not going to be, I don't know where he ranks in that, but he's been so good this year. And it was just, I was shocked he didn't make the All-Star team, especially when Jared Allen was great this year. I would have put Siakam over Allen. I would have put him over Chris Middleton, who made it as well too. He's just been absolutely spectacular.
He's been so good. And I think, we talked about just the lack of Raptors depth, but you just mentioned it right there. Like just to point out why the Raptors are so thin, Fred VanVleet and, that DeRozan team that won 59 games, first in the East, yada, yada. That team had Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet coming off the bench. The championship team had OG Anunoby coming off the bench. And now all 3 of those guys are starters. Norman Powell was traded for Gary Trent. He's been a bench player the entire time. So now he's a starter. So literally your entire bench for your run where you were winning 59 to 60 games every single year is now your starters. And so you don't have a bench. You have to sort of refill those guys. And that's kind of what the Raptors are trying to do right now with the Malakis and the Preciouses, is hopefully build that next iteration, the next up. And for the time being, they're just going to be really thin.